All right. Awesome. Well, I hope everyone, now you guys know you guys are being recorded. So before we begin, I'm going to, all right. So thank you everyone for joining this evening. For those that are just joining us, my name is Elizabeth Cotton. I am the executive director of Black Tech Link. And I know that some of you guys have known the work that I've been doing for like the last 3 to 4 years. During the pandemic, we stayed kind of quiet. We did some outdoor programming, but we really wanted to, during the pandemic, just to kind of focus on building our infrastructure as a new organization. We were able to host some amazing talks in the past with our moderator tonight, Larry Johnson. And I just also want to share for those that are joining, so our mission for Black Tech Link is to focus on the economic development of Black communities. And we do that through workforce development, technical training, and networking opportunities. In the past, we've done a lot of in-person events, primarily in San Diego, because that's kind of like our home base. But given COVID, we've been able to impact a lot of communities through our virtual programming. And so I'm excited to continue those virtual programs, with our online community. Before we begin, I just kind of also want to give a little bit of code of conduct. We try to provide like a harassment-free environment. So please keep it clean, keep it kosher. Tonight, I want to introduce our moderator, Larry Johnson, who you may have seen him in some of our previous talks. Larry is a software engineer from one of our corporate partners, Cambridge Mobile Telematics, which is a IoT company based in Boston, and they are able to support us during the last couple years. And I also want to introduce University of Michigan professor Jeff Sakamoto, who is also founder and CTO of Zecoro Industries, Zecoro Technology, who will be providing insight on tonight's discussion. And Larry, I will leave it to you.
Yeah. Well, first, thank you, Elizabeth, for warm welcome, and everyone on the call as well. We're excited. I always enjoy these conversations. Like, I don't know who's on the East Coast tonight, but it's like by 9 o'clock your time. I'm always excited about the fact that we all have long days of work and we still come here and still nerd out in tech and want to be hungry and learn more. This information we'll share tonight through Jeff, super important. I had no idea how important it is. I'm a finance nerd and like learn about energy as well at different times. So excited to hear what Jeff has to give us tonight about lithium. So with that, without further ado, let's go ahead and introduce our guest speaker for this evening. I'm going to be moderating myself, but Jeff's going to do all the talking, and I'm going to kind of facilitate some of the things we're going to discuss. I would ask kind of like we're going to keep it formal the first maybe 30, 45 minutes or so. Elizabeth and Jaden, if you guys can kind of monitor the questions, I'm not going to be able to see the questions coming in. If the question is related to what we're talking about at that particular point in time, kind of interrupt me and just say, hey, there's a question that came in that's related to what you guys are talking about. Otherwise, we're going to say formal Q&A for the end. So you guys can kind of ask any kind of questions to Jeff as he's the expert in the room on this particular topic. So with that, let's start with Jeff. Jeff Sakamoto, thank you for joining us this evening. We're very excited to have you. Kind of tell us a little bit about Zecoro and the work that you do in the lithium industry.
Sure, yeah. And first of all, I'd like to thank you all, Elizabeth and Larry, for this opportunity. This is my career goal, is to make an impact. I'd hope to help this transition from fossil fuels to electric future and create jobs while doing so. And just a disclaimer here, I have a conflict of interest. I am the founder and CTO of Zecoro. And so I have to say this, that's my disclaimer as a professor also at the University of Michigan. Can I just give just a quick introduction of who I am?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, everyone. Yeah, you start with pretty much just tell us about yourself and the work that you're doing. Absolutely.
Just, really quickly. So I born and raised in San Francisco, grew up in Silicon Valley. I was in the Army for 3 years, enlisted. And then when I went back to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo for my undergraduate degree, and I was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Army. And then I went to UCLA for my PhD. And then I worked at JPL, the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory, for 10 years. And I worked on the Mars rover batteries, or the 2003 twin rovers. And then I came to Michigan in 2007. And ever since then, some of the shortcomings I saw with the NASA lithium-ion batteries, I thought of as opportunity to create a new kind of battery. And that's what I've been working on for the last 14 years. So at Zecoro, I'm the CTO and founder, as I mentioned. And what we're working on, we're trying to develop what I refer to as a paradigm shift in batteries. One could argue with what I'm about to refer to it as, but what this is, it's one of the final frontiers, I'd say, in battery technologies. And I say that because the lithium-ion battery has been around for 30 years now. In terms of how good it can get, we're getting to the point where, past the point of diminishing returns, and, it's cresting in terms of how good lithium-ion can be. And so what's the next is there a next big step? And in my opinion, again, this is that paradigm shift, that the final frontier. The name lithium-ion means it does not contain any pure metallic lithium, right? So in the 1980s, they tried to use pure metallic lithium, the holy grail of lithium electrodes. It's in a pure metallic state. But when they use that with a liquid electrolyte, just like what they have in cell phones, and all lithium-ion batteries are liquid-based, there was an instability, and they blew up. They stopped right there. And that's when they transitioned over to the lithium-ion battery. But now with the invention of new materials, solid materials, ceramics that can conduct lithium ions as fast as a liquid can and is not flammable, this is the paradigm shift. We can go back to the pure lithium, the holy grail electrode, shrink the battery by half its size, maintain the same energy, and it's not flammable. And at Zecoro, we're working on that material breakthrough, that ceramic, and we're trying to scale it. We're trying to do it techno-economically and be one of the first ones to create a revenue stream for this new kind of battery. There's a lot of hype out there right now in this kind of space. There's Silicon Valley's got this company called QuantumScape. Samsung's got a lot of money. There are startups all over, billions. They're going IPOs with billions of dollars of cash, and it's for this kind of battery. But again, it's a promise of a battery at this point. It's not. There's no revenue generated for this kind of battery. So I'm going to use my words carefully. It could be a paradigm shift if we can demonstrate that we can scale it, and there's enough material supplies in the Earth's crust that we can get access to those materials. A big issue today these days in terms of sustainability and where we get these elements from. So in a nutshell, I'll have other opportunities to talk more about the details of Zecoro, but in a nutshell, that's the 35,000 foot perspective on what Zecoro is doing in my role at Zecoro.
So thanks for the introduction, Loie. Thank you for your service as well. And I don't know what you haven't done at this point. Your career seems so robust. Seriously, you're very accomplished and great job in what you're able to do to kind of encourage us to get into this game as well. So let's start from the beginning. And this is, I'm embarrassed to say this. I took chemistry many years ago, and I should know this. Talk about what lithium is. We don't even know. You mentioned a lot of term lithium ion and other tangential topics. Let's just focus on the core element of what lithium is. Help us understand that concept just at a foundational level. Like I'm a 2-year-old. What is lithium as a material? And just kind of give us that quick overview as well.
Yeah, I mean, what lithium is a chemical element. What gives it its distinct properties in the context of changing the energy landscape is that it's light, relatively light. The atoms are relatively small, especially when they're ionized in the lithium ion form. And one of the unique features of it's not just that it's small and light, it's that and not to get too technical, but it does not, so we all know about electrons and atoms. It's like basically you have a planet and then you have a moon, the moon's like an electron circling the Earth, for example. What's unique about lithium is it only has one moon or one electron, and as a result, it doesn't want it. It wants to give it to anything it comes into contact with. But that propensity to give away that moon, that electron, results in a very high voltage. So if you look at your cell phone battery, you'll see that it's like a 3.7 or 4 volt battery. And that's 4 times or 3 times that of an alkaline battery, which is 1.2 volts, right? Or 1.5 volts. And so you take that combination of voltage, which translates into energy, and size, which translates into how quickly it can move. And there you have a battery that has a lot of energy and has a lot of power. I mean, it can move atoms and electrons really fast. And that's those are key elements for a game-changing battery. How much energy you can store and how quickly you can charge and discharge it.
So that's a great segue. So you hear this terms of, they call it power and energy density. Can you kind of explain just in layman's terms, like it sounds to the layman that they're exactly the same, but they're actually very different, and they're very different in an important way. Can you explain what energy and power density are in terms of what they are in tandem with each other and also individually?
Sure, yeah. I like to use the analogy of water flowing through a hose from a reservoir. And then I'll connect this to an EV, a car, an electric vehicle. So if we think about, we have a tank of water, a barrel of water, we have a hose attached to the bottom of it. The size of the garden hose that we're taking water from it, that determines how quickly the water can flow from that tank. So that's like power. That's so how quickly one can extract volume or energy. That's determined by like the size of the garden hose. And then how much energy or water there is to flow, that's just given, that's an analogous to how much water there is in the barrel, right? So if you make a connection to that to an EV, an electric vehicle, power is how quickly you can extract the energy from the battery. So when you step on the accelerator pedal, you want power. You want to be able to extract a certain amount of energy from that battery so you can accelerate on the freeway or whatever. And then how the range of the car is determined by how much energy there is in that battery, like how much water there is in that reservoir, right? So that's the connection between power and energy density. Power and energy. Power is how quickly you can pull the energy out and put it back in, and then energy is how it translates into range of the battery or the car.
So you mentioned that lithium's been around for 30 years, right? Like, but all of a sudden, like it feels to me it came up here overnight. Why is lithium so important today? And then also, what are some other alternative sources of energy that you feel that is around lithium? Or I guess let me say it a different way. Why is lithium so important as an alternative source of energy? Let's say that, than what was traditionally there. Does that make sense? A little more clear?
Yeah. Okay, so the first part of that question as to why now, like why, especially like within the last 12 years or so, like we had a big push on electric vehicles, 2008 to 2010 or 2012. And that got things kind of kickstarted. Here's the big mystery to me is, and it's probably policy driven. Gas prices were crazy back then, 4 or 5 back, but that's another matter. I think that was kind of the motivation for exploring or expanding increasing resources to go into vehicle electrification. But then like 2012, 2020, the gas prices stayed low. But the opposite happened with the electric vehicle industry. They kept on going. And so to me, that's like a tipping point or some kind of indicator that they're here to stay. I think that's what's different about electric vehicles. So tying this back to why is lithium important? To me, there is no other technology, any other electrochemistry that can achieve the energy densities and the power densities of a lithium battery. It's just there are unique properties associated with lithium, the chemistry come from a lithium battery that makes it by far the best choice, in my opinion, for batteries for EVs. They're compact, relatively lightweight for how much energy they can store. And there's enough lithium at this point to make them economical.
Gotcha. Speaking of economics, you talk about that it has a high power density, higher energy density. So today you're looking at a few hours for most of the range of batteries. Will that ever improve over time? You talk about how lightweight that it is. Maybe Moore's law can help compact more of this technology into its applications. Will we ever see more than a couple hours? Say you're on a road trip driving and your car stops in the middle of nowhere. Like, are there going to be times where this thing can drive for a whole day? Like, what's the long-term solution around this?
You mean how quickly can it be charged, or how long can it last?
Yeah, how long can it be charged? Sorry, how long can it be, the power be supplied essentially?
Yeah, I think the goal is like more of a practical goal. I think it's just to match what the internal combustion engine car can provide. Typically a tank of gas gets you 300 to 400 miles. So I think that's basically the goal for the battery pack. If a battery pack can provide that kind of range, like on a road trip, that's a goal. And then like Tesla, for example, they have models with different size battery packs. The longer range, the more you pay, right? So basically the battery is driving the cost of the car. It really is. And so that's right now. And let me just, it's not tangential. It's actually, let me add some more details here. Give me just 5 minutes here on this.
Yeah,
Let me
go ahead.
talk about the techno-economics in the next 10 years in lithium, because it'll answer your question in a very long-winded way, and that's what professors do, right?
Good show. Go ahead. Let's go.
Yeah. So even without this, so this, a lot of my data that I'm about to talk about comes from Bloomberg, and they say that over the next 10 years, even taking into consideration the COVID situation, now market adoption for EVs is about 1 to 2%, not that much right now. But in 2022, 23, it's going to go up to like 5%. And then 2025, maybe it goes up to maybe like 10%. And then 2030, that's when it starts to get this tipping point, maybe like maybe 15 to 20%. Right. So 2025, that 10% that I was just talking about, I mean, that may, there's some plus and minus with that 10%. But that's going to be this tipping point, because that's when the battery pack and the drivetrain for EV, that's really the cost is really driven by the battery pack cost, reaches cost parity with an internal combustion engine powertrain, right? So then that's an important point, because now the customer doesn't see the difference, right? If that car, that electric vehicle, can provide that same 300 to 400 mile range, and it can do it for the same cost, and take into consideration this: if automotive manufacturers are no longer investing in the next generation internal combustion engine models, depreciation also tends to accelerate for internal combustion engine cars. Well, the same doesn't happen for EVs, right? So there's a lot of reasons why that's a very important point. Even though the market adoption is just 5 to 10% in that range, it's the future that really is going to push EVs forward, because of that cost parity between internal combustion engine powertrains and then also the battery pack.
Gotcha.
I just wanted to put that out there. I knew in this conversation tonight, I had to get that information out there, because that's a really important point. And then the next one, 2030-ish, is, okay, now you're at 20% market adoption. There's another point there, another inflection point. Where's the electricity going to come from? All right, so that's the next big phase. That's the next big hurdle to get us to this, I think it's around 2035, 2040, 2050 is when they're supposed to have like 50%.
I've been struggling to pay my electricity.
Uh-oh.
Electricity's pretty low
Bro,
over here.
that's Spider-Man.
What's up?
Do a backflip, Spider-Man.
We're here talking about the electric part, right? The electric part.
Do a backflip.
Wait, do a backflip.
Oh, we got hacked or something? Is that what I was? What the heck was that? So you guys still there?
Is that a plug for the, I'm good. You didn't have to do that plug. I'm going to see the next Spider-Man movie anyway.
Okay.
Yeah,
Nice.
Sorry about
that was just a commercial.
Right.
All right. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead, Jeff.
I think I made my point about the next point, the 2030 transition. Like, where's the electricity come from?
Gotcha. No, I appreciate. Okay, so switching gears a little bit. Talk about, so you got the process. You have this traditional process of oil and gas, which you don't have to get into. But let's talk about the process of getting these minerals out of the ground and into an application. So I've heard these processes called, there's the two major types. It's called brine mining and hard rock refinement, or sorry, hard rock. Are those, first of all, confirm that those are the two major types of processes involved? And secondly, can you kind of explain them just at a very high level for the layman? You don't have to get too detailed.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I mean, as a material scientist, I should probably know the hard rock more so than because I deal with materials and such. But I'm not so familiar with the hard rock mining, but I'm somewhat familiar with the brine mining.
Okay.
I think right now most of the world's lithium comes from the brine mining, but that's a process. So right now, most of that brine mining most of the lithium is in salt form in South America, Argentina and Chile. But actually, most of the lithium right now at the moment is coming from Australia. And what they do with these brine mines is basically they'll extract brine, or they'll collect brine, and then they'll solubilize it with water. And this is the not so pretty part about the environmental impact. It takes a lot of water basically. And that'll put all those ions in solution. Those ions are sodium. Well, I think it's like 9% sodium, maybe 2% potassium. And this is the sad thing. It's like maybe 0.1% lithium. And I think one has to, so this is all by weight percentage. So you have to do a lot of mining and use a lot of water to extract, to get the lithium solubilized, and then it can be extracted and purified. So that's the essence of how the lithium mining, salt brining is done. And I think that's what would be done at of course, the Salton Sea.
So it sounds like a very intricate process. Is it actually safe on the environment? You know, a lot of these alternative sources of energy, I mean, is from a safety perspective on Earth, we want to be responsible as citizens of the Earth. How safe is lithium as an energy?
Yeah, I mean, I got to say, I'm not enough of an expert to say this. I'm not an authority, but I read that, you know, it's the water. You know, you have, especially in these areas that are dry, where do you get that water from?
Sure.
You know, and I think that creates not only just that there's an environmental impact, but there's a societal impact as well. From the surrounding communities, they need that water too.
Yeah.
I mean, the extent damage, I don't know. Like I said, I'm not an authority on this, but this is what I read about.
But what about the application of it? So you remember you used to go through the TSA lines or whatever, and always ask, you have this certain type of battery, I forget what it was, some kind of lithium battery. And they're asked, because it can explode in your bag or something like that, cause a plane incident. So like, is it safe after its use as well? Like, I mean, what are the safeguards and how are companies making it safer so that it doesn't explode in your pocket?
There are two aspects yeah. Hey, well, I mean, this is why it's good to go solid state. You know, they're not flammable, but it's an intrinsic safety mechanism. But here are the problems. And Samsung saw this. You know, that was a $7 billion debacle there with Samsung. You know, when they had the Note 7, I think it was. Wow. They pushed the limits with regard to how close the electrodes can get. Right? And then if there's a slight defect, then you get those two electrodes are touching each other. You get instantaneous discharge. The biggest problem is typically with the charging. You heard about this on the planes, I think, right? So somebody goes to plug in their phone on the plane and it doesn't charge properly for some reason, and that's where the fires start. This is a condition called overcharge. Maybe the power electronics that monitor the charge process are not working properly, and the battery's overcharged. It creates oxygen on the cathode, heat, and you have a liquid electrolyte that's like a fuel, and that creates a fire. The much more rare instances during discharge, when you're trying to extract, when it's in use, right? There's not as much of a chance of instantaneous discharge, except if there's an accident and the electrodes touch each other during discharge. Maybe that's an issue. But really, the problem with the instability comes upon charging, during charging.
I got you. So you mentioned one of the. Oh, sorry, you're still talking.
Yeah, I want to add this too. You know, it's like, if we got to put this in context too. I mean, if you think about EV or vehicles, you know, there are a lot more. Well, there's a lot more internal combustion engine vehicles on the road today, but you know, gasoline is also dangerous. You know, if you think about fires created by gasoline, you know, so we got to think about the numbers here too. I mean, yeah, there's some safety issues, but you know, overall, it's still considered a very safe technology.
Gotcha. You mentioned some of the incumbents. I know you can't talk so much about, because you have conflict of interest with your, you know, relationships with the university and your organization, but you got all these incumbents like, you know, Apple and Google, you know, I guess you could say maybe, yeah, for like smartphone kind of technology, obviously working with other vendors like Samsung. You got Tesla and you got some of these OEMs in the EV space. Are there like other applications and things that we don't know about that are transpiring in this industry, you know, around lithium, you know, technologies that are going to be useful in the future that we may not be aware of, that could be up and coming? Do you know of anything like that you're able to share with the audience?
Like other uses of lithium batteries?
Yeah, like, I mean, like other larger companies that may be using it in applications that are going to be more popular, because we know about cars, we know about smartphones, you know, smart cars, and we get that. What about the smart next thing, you know, that technology?
Yeah. I mean, I just saw the chat exactly. That's where I was going to go. Electric aircraft. That's for short haul, meaning air taxis. I think there's a definition of the number of miles. It's like 500 miles or less. That's short haul. But I think that's kind of really pushing it for batteries, to be honest with you. But I think for short haul, even like taxi services, I think this is a really, you know, Uber has invested quite a bit in this. I know Amazon with package delivery, that kind of stuff. I think this is lithium batteries. Again, it's the properties of lithium that make it unique and make it suitable perhaps for electrified flight. And that is, it's light, right? How much energy you can store per unit volume, and mass more particular and more specifically. There's a lot of interest. if I can point you to a reference, there's a professor Viswanathan. I don't want to. I don't want to spell that, but it's because I wouldn't spell it properly. But he's at Carnegie Mellon. If you just type in Carnegie Mellon, mechanical engineering, electrified aviation, he's like the national authority on that. He's got a lot of good stuff, a lot of good information on his website about electrified flight. A lot of good publications too about how feasible that is.
Nice. Well, what about, so you talk about, we got the application that's kind of reverse. You mentioned that there's a lot of mining happening in like the South American region of the world. What about like, as an investment, right? So I know you got Trelali here too as well, but lithium as an investment, what are some of the impact, what are some of the issues that you potentially could have when you have certain parts of the world that have this resource, for one, geographically, across the world from us, and then secondly, other people who are ushering the process of helping these other indigenous people mine this technology. What are some of the geopolitics involved that are causing issues to help this to be maybe a not so sound investment? Some of the risks, I guess, some of the business risks, I guess. Can you speak to some of the geopolitics that are happening with some of these, raw mining and different things like that?
Yeah, I think an analogy I can draw. I don't know. I'm not really super qualified to respond to that, but I can use an analogy based on what I've read. So I'll use the analogy of OPEC, petroleum exporting countries. They basically fenced in oil and petroleum and how it's circulated around the world. And we see what that's done to the world, right? The economics and more so what has happened to countries. I'm not saying it's good or bad, it's just it has had a big impact what OPEC has done. It could be that there's something similar for lithium, right? A couple countries have it. Just like with oil, some of that's easier to extract than others. So you want to go to the easiest to extract stuff first, right? And deplete that first, and then go to the next one, just like the hard rock, for example. So I think we're going to see a lot of analogies between like OPEC in the oil industry and lithium. It's just that I don't think the sources of lithium are as concentrated sources of lithium are as abundant as with oil. Like there's oil found everywhere, but with lithium, it's really South America. It's like 90% it's in South America, the accessible lithium.
Wow.
There, and then Australia, there's some there, but that just seems to be more accessible right now for whatever reason. I don't know if it's just cost. I think there's some policy there too. And then we have an undisclosed amount, I think in the United States, the USGS has an undisclosed amount. A lot of it's on the west side of the country.
Yeah, that was my next question. So can you talk, this is new information for me because I'm more of an software engineer by trade. So I'm keeping up with some of the latest developments in this particular industry. But can you talk a little bit about like what's happened domestically? So, I heard about that there's a geographical landmark called the Salton Sea that was formed, I guess, naturally here in the United States. And there's investment opportunities there. And, people on this call getting this information probably for the first time, can you kind of explain what's happening there and how we can take advantage of that information and kind of get ahead of the game early to also be a part of this changing industry and evolution of technology?
Yeah, I think maybe again, I'm not too familiar with like the ratio of the different elements like the potassium, sodium, and lithium in the Salton Sea. But I think that would be a good place to start because that ratio, how much lithium there is, and the ratio of it will determine how much work has to be done to extract it, how much water has to be used, how much resources, how much energy has to go into extracting that lithium. So there you get your environmental impact from that number, that analysis. And then maybe it becomes more political. It's like, how much do we want to pay locally? What's the price locally to pay for extracting this lithium? Yeah, we can sell it. It's a good source. It's a nice domestic source of lithium. But we as in the community, the local community, what's it going to do to us? And what it does to them, again, it goes back to this thing, like just how much lithium there is and what concentration there is, and that determines what the impact is on the environment and the resources in the local area.
I also want to just jump in really quickly. So right now, like the US government has given Berkshire Hathaway about $19 million just to do prospecting in the region of Imperial County. And then I know that Governor Newsom has signed like $250 million to do like extraction and just providing resources to Imperial County. And for those that aren't too familiar with Imperial County, it's right next to, it's the southeast of California. right next to San Diego County. It borders the Mexican border, Mexicali, Arizona, and Palm Springs. And so just to give more context around the Salton Sea, it was created by a runoff from the Colorado River. And it was, it's used for agricultural reasons. But over the years, there's just been a lot of pollution to the Salton Sea due to the high salinity levels. If you guys are unfamiliar with Imperial County, it is like a desert. It's like one of the hottest regions like in the nation. And so there's a lot of, issues with, pollution, fish dying, birds being impacted, avian being impacted in the region. But one of the key things about the Salton Sea is there's a lot of geothermal activity underneath, which is causing, that opportunity for, lithium production in that region. And so, there's a lot of opportunity. That's why a lot of, California government is putting a lot of money into, prospecting and, production and mining, because, in the US, that is one of like the few sources, as Jeff mentioned, the biggest source of lithium is in Australia, South America, Chile, China, even Zimbabwe. But, to have our own like source in, our backyard is very important for the poorest county in California.
So how do we, Elizabeth, thanks for sharing that, by the way, how do we take advantage of that information? Do you have any links you can share for us to, get ahead of that so we can take advantage financially of this investment, or even to learn more about it? Do you have anything you can share with the group, or even later that we can learn more about this opportunity?
Absolutely. I'm going to share a document that was put out by the Department of Energy. I think her name is Jennifer Granholm, the secretary for the Department of Energy, but she put out a really great report on, just the plan from 2021 to 2021 to 2030 about, what she envisions as far as like lithium battery production. And she really wants to, secure, lithium, domestic lithium production, not only supply, but the supply chain of it. So not just the extraction, like all the way from extraction to production to, refining, all the way to recycling. And so I'm going to share that in the chat right now.
It's good to hear that name again. Jennifer was the former governor of Michigan.
Oh, she is?
Yeah.
Okay. I did not know that.
Yeah, I mean, just maybe I should add some perspective too. I have a link to a paper I can share also. It refers to desalination as an alternative process, but it's got some nice facts in there. Just to put some numbers in there, between now and 2050, when they expect a lot of lithium batteries to be made for vehicle electrification, they're expecting about 5 trillion tons of lithium to be in that period. And to give you an idea, there's about 4 to 6 kilograms of lithium in an EV battery pack.
Wow.
So there's one can do the math there and figure out how much lithium that is, but be a lot of lithium that's going to be necessary to make this transition to an electric future.
So I want to talk. I have some more questions about the lithium side. I want to just quickly talk about what's happening with the plant. Everybody knows about fossil fuels. We're depleting it in natural resource. Like I remember growing up watching, which was to me the best versions, was Mel Gibson and Mad Max, Tom Harley and Charlize Theron. I'm probably pronouncing her name wrong. They did the remake, but I still like the old one better. For those who are old enough on the call to remember that. Do you ever think that we'll ever see a dystopian future in that way? Like, sometimes science fiction becomes science fact. Will we be able to convert to something alternative fast enough so that the world is not going crazy with its current consumption of oil? Or do you think that we're going to be able to solve this problem of really moving to something different in a scalable fashion in enough time?
That's a really good question. Yeah, I mean, the techno-economic analysis says, in the context of this discussion, there is enough lithium. So I think in terms of, can we get there? We don't want to build a bridge to nowhere. Yeah, we can get there. But your question is, how quickly do we get there, and do we
Right.
do that in a meaningful, rational, and peaceful way? And that has to be determined. It's all over the place. Just like Let me go back a little bit. Like for example, in Europe, before Dieselgate, Volkswagen had this, they got busted for the diesel cheat systems. They were all on board with diesel, right? And all of Europe was on board with diesel. That really changes, that really had a different perspective on vehicle electrification as a result. And what Europe is doing matters when it comes to transportation, right? But then this thing like Dieselgate pops up, and now Volkswagen got sued, and now Germany, I was just in Germany last week in Munich. They are all on board with vehicle electrification, right? So there's that. And then like Toyota, they made the Prius, right? One of the first EVs, but they're not really convinced that they're not planning on an all electric lithium ion battery right now either, right? They were thinking hybrids would be the way, right? So maybe hybrids would be like an answer, like a compromise. How quickly do we get there, and can we do that rationally? But there's a lot of debate to that too. Like, why don't we just go full force and go all electric? So there's no good. I don't have an answer right now. So probably somebody from an automotive company might have a better answer, but I don't know if they'd have the right answer now too, because also right now the EV purchase is still an emotional purchase, right? So that's unpredictable as a result. So it's just a confluence of many factors, and if human emotions are involved,
So you may have asked another question that's kind of related. So on the opposite side of it, say we do get to a lithium future, are we just playing musical chairs where now we're just depleting another finite limited resource, or it's so much available material? And why is that? Why is it so much? How is that scalable versus other? Break it down for us.
Yeah, that's a great question. Fossil fuels can't be recycled, but lithium can. That's my short answer to that, right? There are significant efforts to recycle lithium and all of the materials that go into lithium batteries, such as on the other side of the cell in the cathode, you got very important metals like cobalt, nickel. Manganese is cheap, but cobalt and nickel they're serious, earnest plans to recycle those elements.
Gotcha. What about the myths of things like, I read certain books. I'm not sure about the book. I read Robert Bryce, Power Hungry. What about nuclear power or natural gas? Why aren't those alternative sources that they have just as much higher power and energy density as lithium does? Why aren't those?
So they like to make the distinction between energy generation and energy storage. Right? If we're talking nuclear, that's creating of energy. If we're talking fossil fuels, that's creation of energy. I think I know for an electric car, it's about energy storage. Unless you think about like fuel cells, that's where you're creating energy with a fuel cell and using it immediately after it's generated. Now that's somewhere in between fossil fuels, and it's using hydrogen basically. But from what I've seen, fuel cells, again, this is based on a lot of stuff like I saw on Bloomberg recently. It's just the complexity, the size, and the techno-economics, the cradle to grave analysis of fuel cells. It's not, you can't match that of lithium right now. Just a pure battery, pure energy storage system.
Gotcha. All right, we're bringing this baby home. I want to talk about how people can, on this call today, benefit today through this technology. What are some of the jobs that are available today, like around lithium and we are always hear about the most people probably want to call are software people or people in IT, but what about an energy future of a lithium? What are kind of jobs are going to be available for us in the future, and also even today that we can be preparing ourselves for?
This is a topic I'm really excited about. I'm really passionate about right now, because when I work a lot with industry, from microelectronics to cars, and they are just so hungry for students that have experience with batteries, whether it's the fundamental research side of things, or all the way to system integration, or even to like sustainability, where all this lithium policy and that kind of stuff. There's so many jobs and opportunities right now in this space, because there's a lot of unknown in terms of like where it's going. But just like on the hardware side of things, I think there are a lot of jobs. I think the biggest opportunities and the most obvious opportunities are like system integration. How do you design a product around a battery, or do the opposite? How do you design a battery to fit a product? Right? Those system level integration things. Software has a huge place, because if we can charge these batteries safely with software, the right software protocol and monitoring systems, we can get the most energy out of these batteries and do it safely too. Right. And then the hardware too benefits from most optimized use for that battery. I think that's where a lot of like mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, software engineering, manufacturing, that's another one that I cannot talk enough about, because we want to be sustainable in this country. You know, the lithium ion, you know, this is a sad story, I hate to say it. Lithium ion battery falls into this category of this now saying called invented here, made there. So we got to stop that. We got to reverse that. We got to invent here, or we got to bring it back here. Maybe we need to invent new processes of manufacturing. Maybe solid state batteries. You know, this is where I have a conflict of interest, but this is a new kind of battery. You know, maybe these are opportunities for us to bring manufacturing or build it within the country, right? So we're more self-sustainable. We don't want to be reliant on buying foreign battery packs, right? And lots of them, right? So I think manufacturing, there's just a lot to be done in manufacturing, how to do it cheaply, supply chains that are built around, that start the manufacturing, right? There's all things, and that gets into policy and techno-economics, right? So it brings in a lot of people to make this transition happen. And I think, again, with policy, and given like the last 10 years of historic, low gas prices, I think it's really here to stay. I really do. And I think there's investment internationally. So I really think it's here, this transition, this commitment to this transition from fossil fuels to electric future is here to stay. I think it's it's going to create a lot of opportunities and jobs in this country.
So what would you say to someone that has no idea about lithium? Lithium 101, where do we get started? Like today from this call, you say, hey, if I were you and you're interested in this, it sounds like something you're passionate about. Where do you go to next to just start that journey, or to at least explore it? What's the first thing you tell someone to do?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on the person, but
That's true.
It's nice to convince yourself, like, if you want to make a career change or get interested in something, learn about it. And there's a lot of good references out there. I'd suggest being an academic. A lot of these are free now because they're published online and they're paid. But like, if you look at these journals are pretty well known, like Science and Nature and Nature Energy. You look at those resources, just Google Nature, those journals, type in lithium, type in batteries. That's a good place to start. You'll see hundreds of references on where to go if you see a certain area, and that's where you go. There's a lot of stuff on the internet too. Bloomberg is a great, I have no stock in Bloomberg whatsoever. I've worked with those folks, and I believe their message that they're saying. They have a lot of good resources. I'll say that. A lot of good like YouTube videos and such to look at.
Sure. What would you say out of today's? We talked about a lot of different topics. We talked about techno-economics. We talked about the process of lithium. We talked about the science of it. So many different things that we discussed today. What would you say the top 1 or 2 things you would like to have people walk away from this discussion today that you're passionate about? You've been in for quite several years. What would you like people to know about this in their own lives, or some of the things that were in today's discussion?
Like I said, it's not a bridge to nowhere. Lithium battery is a viable technology to make this transition from a fossil fuel economy to an electric economy. The rug will not be pulled out from under us as far as the technology. It's there, it's proven, it will get there. It will get us there, but how it gets us there and how bumpy that road is has a lot to do with how our approach to this, both policy and with jobs and companies and such. So that's one thing that I'd like to say. The other thing, so that I'm a firm believer in these. This is 25 years of research on batteries and looking at the landscape, and I am myself convinced myself that batteries, and this is my opinion, that they do have the performance characteristics, and fundamentally they will provide the technology needed to go to a full EVs. But the other thing is, it takes a lot of patience too. You're going to hear a lot. You're going to hear a lot about battery failures, battery companies failing. There are a lot of bad sayings about battery companies. They promise this, but they never deliver.
Yep.
It's a sad truth. There's a lot of money going into it, and a lot of that money will not be turned into bear fruit. I'll say that. But don't give up. There's still there's still a lot of need for battery technology. Some companies out there will be successful. I'm not referring to my company in particular, but I'm just saying that don't give up. This is a tough problem. We're confined by the periodic table. I told you about lithium and its unique properties. Okay, identified that. But now how do we get it? Where do we get it? How cheap is it? And how do we put it into batteries, right? That's a very confined problem. And it just there's so many constraints in terms of identifying a chemical element and then impacting the world with that, right? So I think that just takes my message there, just have some patience and there's going to be some bumps along the road. There will be a lot of spectacular failures of these billion-dollar startup companies. I can almost guarantee that, but that doesn't mean that some of these battery companies will have a breakthrough that will even make big improvements upon current state-of-the-art lithium-ion batteries.
Gotcha. Well, I want to open to the group. Thanks, Jeff. I want to open to the group to ask questions, but I do want to thank you for your time and letting me give me a chance to kind of pick your brain a little bit. It's a topic that it feels esoteric in nature because it's something that people don't talk about every day, but I learned a lot about it just learning about it, getting ready for this presentation and spending time with you. And I really appreciate your time today for spending with us. I know you're super busy and got a lot of things going on, but thank you for spending time with us today. Elizabeth,
you're welcome. Thank you for this opportunity. I'd love for this opportunity to reach out. Really, and looking forward to any questions.
Yeah, Elizabeth, go ahead. We're going to open up to questions. I don't know if we want to just have group people ask off mute, or are there questions in the chat that were put in that I didn't see or Jeff didn't see? Let's go ahead and just open up the floor to questions for people to kind of chime in and pick Jeff's brain.
Yeah, so if you do have a question, please feel free to jump on. I see Larissa's hand is raised.
Yes. I have a question. I want to know how the safety issues, how do you get it out the ground? We're trying to get rid of coal and now we're coming up with something else. How is it mined? Is it safe for the people who get it out? Who's involved with it? Is it going to be where the ocean gets involved with this thing and kind of handles it? I need to know the mining aspect of it, of how you put it together before you put it in the cell phone or in the car battery or wherever it's going to go.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think there are two aspects there to focus on. Water use. If it's a salt mine that's being mined, got to think about where that water is coming from. And by taking that water or redirecting that water, how's that could impact the people that were relying on that water. The next thing is, where does the electricity, where does the energy come from to mine that salt? This is something I was going to, when Elizabeth, you were talking about the details about the Salton Sea. One nice thing about the location of the Salton Sea is that it's in California, basically co-located in one of the world's leaders of alternative energy manufacturing and use. It's going to take electricity to do that mining. There's a lot of green electricity technology in the state of California. I think that's a nice resource. And the fact that it's co-located, it's in the state of California, I think that can help with reducing the energy intensity of the mining process. Those are the two things I'd say. Think about the water and then think about the energy needed to extract that lithium.
Do you think that, like, you know, there's so much sun right there, right in the desert, is a lot of it powered by solar energy?
Exactly. Perfect. I think Elon Musk had that foresight with the gigawatt factory, right? There's a lot of solar cells out there in Nevada. Just to make the battery packs, but I think he also has. I think there's a lot of lithium in the ground next to that factory. A lot of sunshine there too. Yeah.
We know the sun's there.
I do have another question. Someone said, David, I don't know, Dave, how you pronounce your last name? Brazilian?
Resilient, like the word resilient.
Nice, resilient. Gotcha. Okay. So your question was, where are you from, by the way? Where are you at? What part of the country are you at, David?
I am in San Diego, originally from Brooklyn.
Nice. You might get. I'm from Pittsburgh originally, so I love East Coast people and West Coast too. I like y'all too, but I'm saying East Coast is better. Anyway, so David, your question was, what's the biggest risk to lithium battery adoption? Did you get that, Jeff? What's the biggest risk to lithium battery adoption?
You mean like robbing Peter to pay Paul kind of thing?
Feel free to elaborate, David. Go ahead. You got the floor.
Yes. So the risk for consumers, like, so let's say I want to get into lithium ion and hope it expands and blows up, but is there a risk out there, like, for if I'm a consumer, like, I would be reluctant to get lithium because, or if I'm a supplier, like I want to get into the market, but so what are the risks for the consumers and the investors, just to get the full picture? Yeah,
I think the lithium ion is not going to go away. It's just going to expand. And I say that because, I mean, 20 years ago, it's like the nickel metal hydride or batteries, those are the rechargeable batteries. We don't see those anymore, right? Even so the small scale portable electronics, which the lithium ion battery was originally designed for, that market is completely saturated with lithium. EVs, we don't see any other battery type competing with lithium right now. So it's more a matter, the risk is how fast will lithium grow? It's not a risk. The question about risk is not, is there a competing technology that will overtake lithium? I highly doubt that. I think it's just a question of the risk is focused on how quickly it can grow. And that translates into investment, how much it can grow and how much opportunity there is financially is directly correlated to how fast it grows. How much, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know, did that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, everything sounds so good. And I'm like, usually if it's too good to be true, then so that's why I was just thinking there's got to be something I'm missing. And I'm a big fan, but it's just like nothing's ever that rosy. So that was just trying to see if there's something we weren't considering.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of investment has already gone into lithium, for example, just the mining of lithium and lithium mining companies. So it's not like we're getting, at this point, we're getting it at the ground floor, I'll say that. But I can say that one of the good things about all that prior investment is now critical mass momentum has been established, just that it's not going to go away. Lithium's not going to go away. It's just that the return on investment is not going to be as high compared to, investing lithium 10 years, 20 years ago.
I think Jayton just wrote a program saying the West is redirecting to the East. I'm not sure that means with greater than sign or is that redirection, but I'll skip past his note. Gary had a good question. Gary Hoffman, which is a very interesting question. What are the recycling economics? Are you able to talk about that a little bit with us? What you can share, Jeff? I know you have conflicts and things like that, but what can you share?
That's a good question. This brings me to another point that has, and this talks about the volatility of the idea, the thought process. So the batteries, the first use of the batteries would go to the EVs. They need it the most. But after this is what they're all saying, the OEMs, the car manufacturers, we want that thing to last 10 years. And after 10 years, it better have 80% of its original capacity. Dang, that's still pretty good, right? 80% of a high power battery, that's gonna have a second life. So there's been a lot of discussion about that second life, where it goes, right? So, I'll get back to recycle. The response to recycling is in here. They're thinking about, where does it go? Does it go to home storage or grid storage? Or does it go to recycling? Here's what I'm hearing now. I think it's going to go to the former. Batteries, the car battery manufacturers, they want the pristine stuff. They want the most pure elements when they're extracted and mined from the ground. So that's where recycling, the recycling will probably occur after the second life. And so, if we take 10 years and probably another 10 or maybe an additional 10 to 15 years, you're talking about a 25-year life cycle. So I don't think we've seen examples of recycling yet to put a number on the economics of recycling. I don't know enough. There are others out there that know recycling, the economics, that could probably give you a better protected number. I think what I'm trying to provide you with is just like the current thought process with regard to where these minerals will go at first and maybe second, and then how they get back into the supply chain. But as of right now, as this is a growing industry, the lithium EV industry, the lithium battery industry, it's the pristine stuff that's really desired because that maximizes performance. So that puts some question marks as to when and how much the recycling is going to cost. Or maybe you just put more money in investment in the recycling to get close to the pure stuff, to emulate the pure stuff. That changes the economics. But right now, this is what I'm seeing. I don't have a clear picture in my mind with regard to recycling. All I know is it will be recycled. I think somebody asked a question about what's the difference between fossil fuels and lithium batteries. Yeah, of course, the lithium and the cobalt and the manganese, that will get, the nickel, that will get recycled. How much? I don't know.
Gary, did we answer your question? Did we answer your question, Gary? Before we move on.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Where are you from, Gary, by the way? Where are you at?
Downtown San Diego.
Nice. You don't sound like you're from the West Coast. You sound like you're from somewhere else.
From the Bay Area and San Diego.
Nice. Well, thanks for joining us tonight. Glad your question was answered. All right, we got Bobby Webb. What about the possibility of hybrid enhanced? Gary, I'm sorry, Bobby, why don't you ask this question? This is a complex question. I want you to say it clear for the group.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm here in San Diego. I work at the San Diego State gas turbine power plant supplying power to San Diego State University. My question is in relation to using hybrid gas turbine power plants that would have supplementary battery storage units to be able to supply power also either on demand or as a steady process where the gas turbine generators actually charge the lithium batteries and then will discharge either on demand or just run long enough to supply power as well as charge the batteries. And then once the batteries are fully charged, the engines can be shut down, and then you can just use the batteries as a discharge capacity, similar to just like residential houses with the Tesla battery pack with the solar power panels on top, which I happen to have that also. But I just wanted to ask about what the probability of that being a big spring, especially here in California, seeing as there's a couple of companies here in the San Diego region and up and down California right now that are actually partnered with General Electric to actually create those solutions on demand if a project comes along so necessary to be able to create that enhanced gas turbine plant with the ability to lower emissions even further by scrubbing the exhaust using an ammonia process. But I was wondering what your idealism on that, Jeff, would be, if that would be a good kind of what would be considered a transitional bridge to going from using fossil fuels to going to pure lithium charging with, solar only in that same kind of capacity.
Yeah, I think, I'm not an expert in that cogeneration and energy storage like the hybrid plant, but I know that arbitrage or load leveling is a very important thing when it comes to vehicle electrification, just because the amount of current that's required to charge an EV is so much higher than what we'd use in the house, right? So where's all that electricity coming from? It's not just the amount of electricity. So back to my analogy of power, right? That's going to come in really high currents. So I don't think we can expect a gas turbine to provide that kind of power all the time. So how do you do that? It's exactly like what you said. You have batteries that soak up the energy, lots of energy, and then they can slowly distribute it to these EVs, because I think in California, this is already an issue with all the EVs in the roads. Where all this, I think you're having issues with load leveling. Where's all this electricity coming from? It's really stressing out the grid. I think the hybrid approach is the way to go. So that's the first part of my question. The second part of my question, the second response to that, that's the first response. Second response is, I got to say, this is my honest opinion. I don't think lithium is the best match for that kind of battery, because it's just, you're not constrained by weight and volume. In the lithium batteries, where they shine is the volume. You pay the price, but you get the dense small batteries and the power and the light batteries, and that's really what EVs need. But for grid storage, I'm hearing a lot about like sodium batteries, for example. Cheap, you can get the sodium from the sea, and they're aqueous, so they can be topped off. They require a little bit of maintenance, but they're not, by removing the constraint of size and weight. I think there are other chemistries like sodium-based chemistries that can be used together with gas turbine. That's my honest opinion about it really highlights the special nature of lithium and where it should be used. That's my opinion. Grid storage, probably they're talking about, you're seeing instances of using lithium batteries, but that's just because they can make big batteries, lithium batteries. But it doesn't necessarily mean the techno-economics is ideal for widespread adoption of that kind of battery for grid storage. I really feel like a non-lithium based chemistry is probably better for grid storage.
Okay, excellent, thanks.
And Bobby, I would encourage you.
Sorry, but that's my opinion.
And Bobby, I'd encourage you to send your resume and your email to Jeff. That was a very complex question. Sounds like you know what you're talking about, so go ahead and get that job. Thanks for the question. All right, we don't have any more questions in the thread. I also want to look at time. Well, I guess what time is it? You got 7:07 your time on the West Coast. Where are we at, Elizabeth? I mean, is this the time to close out and to kind of transition to closing the meeting, or what's like?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you both so much for being on this call tonight and really just rocking the show. I learned so much about lithium. More than like in putting this event together, like I thought I knew some things, but then I definitely learned a lot more. And thank you for everyone that tuned in. I also wanted to just close and say, like, you know, we definitely want to continue having more of these conversations, industry specific conversations, to like really create a community of technologists and engineers. And so I really appreciate you guys like fostering those conversations and really, you know, including the attendees in the conversation as well.
Also, I want to say one last thing. I got to be remiss to say it. Our company, Cambridge Mobile Telematics, we're hiring. I just put in the link in the chat section. So we're looking for all kind of folks on the tech side, business side, internships. We're really growing by dozens of jobs. So DM me for sure if you see something you're interested in, so we can get you kind of in the pipeline, but also feel formally to apply online. We're looking for a bunch of type of folks. So please take a look and let me know.
Absolutely. And I'll also add,
really appreciate this. You know, I live in like an academic bubble, and it's always nice to get out there and hear what other people are thinking. And so I'm really appreciate the questions and the interest too. So thank you for this opportunity. It's pretty neat how this happened, right? Just we contacted.
Thank you for like responding on LinkedIn.
Hey, no problem. Thank you very much for the opportunity. It looked like a great opportunity, and it turned out to be one. So thank you.
Absolutely. And then also, you know, if anyone is looking for a job, Black Tech Link, we just launched our jobs board. And so we're posting jobs pretty regularly. And if there's any employers in the room that may want to post jobs, please feel free to connect with me. I'll put my email in the chat right now. Yes. And we definitely look forward to providing more wonderful discussions in the future. Thank you, Larry, again for being a wonderful moderator.
Go East Coast.
East Coast.
Okay, I'm gonna let that one slide. All right, everyone. Well, you guys have a wonderful rest of your week. And also I want to say Happy Women's Month for all the women that are on the call. Thank you again.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Have a great night.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great night. Bye.
Bye.